This is the Ryan Luelf Show.
I'm not going to call Thanksgiving a crisis. I'm not going to call having to change what I've done for 50 some odd years a crisis. But maybe I just wasn't being my true authentic self because I don't have a space or a place to say, hey, I don't want to do this every Thanksgiving. Maybe. I don't know. But it's sure, does it feel like a big deal? No. But man, we were in the moment eating turkey and dressing, and it tasted different and in a different environment. And, and I had lost all the guilt of not being with the family. It felt real and authentic. And then I thought to myself, why didn't I do this sooner? Yeah. As the man of the house, why didn't I just I've known for years that I want to do something different. And I think it bolds and falls right into that category of, is that a small version of the small crisis, the quiet crisis that successful men don't talk about? Does it fall into that category?
I think anything can fall into a category of crisis. We're the ultimate ones that determine what a crisis is. And
I don't know that I would call this a crisis.
Well, that's fair enough, but we're maybe not a crisis in the sense of like no one's hurt, there hasn't been an injury, nothing catastrophic.
Right.
But when you think about how big the narrative is around holidays in America, you could understand why it would feel like a crisis to do anything other than the traditional
what
thing
you're supposed to do.
Everybody feels obligated to do.
Yes.
Right?
So we as men fall into this trap. I fell into it for 50 years over Thanksgiving. I probably have so many. What this has done is it's opened my eyes up to what else have I not just taken the lead on and said, hey, no, we're not doing it that way anymore. Or I don't like that. Or setting parameters or setting expectations or just being in peace and being away from drama, being away from stress. Like it did open my eyes up to why did it take me to 50 years? I'm successful. I know how to communicate. I have a great family. I've made some mistakes. I'm accountable. But why?
Well, I think, in my life and in my research and just wanting to get some answers for some of those same questions that I've asked, it's all the way back to when we're developing as human beings, when our nervous systems are being formed, when our subconscious is developing as children, the environment that we're in, the experiences that we have, the traditions that are already set in place, the roles that we're invited to play, they become the norm.
Hold on. What do you mean the roles that we're invited to play? Because I think there's a deeper meaning there.
Yeah, what I mean is I'll just use myself as an example. So in my family dynamic, in the environment of, my mom, my dad, I was the older brother. I had a younger brother. And I want to articulate this well because I feel like it could easily be misunderstood. When I say, hey, this was the environment that I grew up in, or I specifically point to my truth and my experience around who I feel like my mother was or who I feel like my father was, there's no blame here. Everyone, including me, including you, all of us are doing the absolute best that we can, in my opinion, at every given moment based on the level of awareness that we have. So I have to go back and understand the impact of my environment to be able to come up with answers for myself and my life. But it's not so that I have someone to blame. Because let's say, for an example, that I use my mother or my father as an example, and I say, looking back, based on how they showed up when I was a young boy, I feel like this is what then happened inside of me. Well, if someone takes that as, well, you're just blaming your mom and your dad. Well, if we go back into their childhood, how far back do you want to go? Yeah. There really is no one to blame. We're only understanding and using situations for illustration purposes so we can get greater understanding for ourselves. They say a fool blames others. A human being blames themselves. and a wise soul blames no one.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to take an extra minute here before I give you an example of what I'm talking about, the roles that we play, because I love my mother. I love my father, even though he passed a few years ago. Like, they did a phenomenal job. They did the best that they could. But based on who they were when I was a kid, still had impact. And that impact is still my truth, still formed my nervous system, and still created roles that I've played in life that I'm becoming consciously aware of and have over time that don't serve me well. Does that make sense?
So mostly. So the impact, both negative and positive, and you're trying to figure out the negative so you can live more positive. But what you're saying is you have played both good and bad roles, and you were invited into those roles because of how you were raised?
Yeah, I would say that I would word it more as conscious versus unconscious. So let's let go of the idea of right or wrong, good or bad for a moment. And let's think of it as, if I'm unconsciously playing a role that I'm not consciously choosing, can you see how that could become a point of frustration that I'm oblivious to? So here's an example. So my mother didn't really know how to regulate her emotions very well when I was a child. And so she was kind of an up and down roller coaster.
Okay.
What I picked up as a little boy is that if I'm going to have a safe environment, then I've got to perform a role that keeps the peace.
Okay.
So I became very attuned early on as a young boy. I can pick up, I'm sensitive, I understand energy, and I began to play this role where I did certain things and performed in certain ways to try to avoid a blow up, or to try to avoid the next crazy moment where my mom was going to lose her shit.
Because that impacted you how?
It was whether or not I felt safe.
And you were trying to avoid that feeling of unsafety.
Yes.
As of being unsafe.
But all of this is happening unconsciously is what I'm saying.
Okay.
But then as I've studied that, as I looked into it, then I look at how I show up as an adult, and I see where I'm still unconsciously in a lot of ways carrying on that role of always making sure I'm concerned about people's emotions and how you feel, and are you happy, and is everybody at peace, and I don't want anybody to be upset. And
it created this empath personality that you've become.
Yeah, and it's not about right or wrong, good or bad. The question is, do I consciously want to live that way? And I would say I want to consciously choose when I'm okay with it, and at other times I want to go, yeah, that's too much of a burden. I'm not playing that role. What I'm suggesting to you is the roles we play, most of them are all unconscious, and we have no idea why we feel upset, empty, numb, irritated. And we blame it on a situation. We blame it on a circumstance. We blame it on our career. We blame it on a family. We blame it on a tradition. And what it might be is that we're playing a role that we never consciously signed up for.
Or wanted to play. But we were groomed to do so.
At no fault of anyone. It's just the environment. It's just how it happened. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then now all of a sudden we become conscious of that, and we go, yeah, that doesn't work for me. But can you imagine in the tradition and the dynamic of, let's just say, a family or a holiday, if that role has become the expected role? This is what we do. This is how you act. This is who you are. I mean, who's going to keep the peace if Ryan doesn't? Who's going to make sure that everybody's having a good time if Ryan doesn't? So if I step out of a role, it impacts and affects the whole situation. And that's what creates havoc. That's what creates uncomfortableness. And this is why so many people just keep playing the game and just keep going along.
They don't know any better.
They don't know any better, but also it's difficult the first time someone...
To break the cycle.
Yes, for someone to go, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
But most people don't know the difference between conscious and subconscious.
I agree.
So how do you so let's go back to the topic at hand. How do you convince a successful man or woman, for that sake? How do you convince them? How do you draw the line between conscious and subconscious? And how do you get them confident enough to be able to make a decision like I made for Thanksgiving, but without the circumstance? I had a circumstance that allowed me to make that decision. Most people don't have that. Most people don't want to meet with their family for the holidays. It's just, that's what we do and we have to do it.
So would you say then, Brian, the difference this time is you felt like you had a good enough story
Yes.
that your family would accept the reason?
Yes.
Isn't it sad
Yes.
that the fact that you just don't want to do it, you decided wasn't a good enough reason all the other years?
That's the quiet crisis.
That sounds like self-abandonment. That sounds like a formula for a very unsatisfied, unfulfilled human. And I'm not necessarily saying that you're an unsatisfied or unfulfilled human.
Not saying that you're wrong.
But my point is that how crazy is it that we have all on some level been trained that to just speak our truth and to simply say, I don't want to do that, we, for the most part, have determined that's not acceptable. That's not okay. Because what's at risk? If you were to just tell your family, I don't want to do that, and they don't like it, what's really at risk? Is it their love and acceptance? Is it the relationship? Is it
the things that are said in the background? Oh, he thinks he's better than us.
Is it that they're going to get mad at you?
Right.
They're going to blame you?
Yeah.
Is it the fear of all the responses that you don't necessarily want to experience or feel or take on? So basically, at an unconscious level, then I would argue, and we're just using you as an example, but this is what men do, especially. I mean, all of us do it, but men especially, is they determine that not being true to themselves is worth giving up in order to keep the peace with all the other people in their life and their response to what would be their truth.
But isn't that the way it's supposed to be?
What?
That we give up ourselves for the betterment of other people?
If you were raised in a Christian home like mine, that's
right.
One of the most powerful narratives of religion.
Yeah, it is.
And why wouldn't you give up yourself? Because they teach you that there's something wrong with you, that you have a deceitful heart, that you're flawed, that you need saved, you need fixed, you need rescued, that your nature
narcissistic
is to do harmful things, to be, quote unquote, sinful, however you want to define that. And so, yeah, I think it's a massive, massive narrative that is weaved into the culture, our religious upbringings, society, school systems, the political landscape, across the board. In so many ways, it is not safe for me to be me. It is not safe for me to say, I don't want to do that. It is not safe for me to say, yeah, I don't want to play that role.
And when you say that, it's not safe. You're right. Like, it is not safe for us as men to think about us first.
Yeah.
And I think you said something earlier to where that indicates maybe if we were allowed that safe space, maybe if we were allowed to be our most authentic selves, maybe the value and interpretation of us as individuals, as men, as leaders, as head of family, as husbands, as boyfriends, as fathers, brothers, maybe then we live at a different level, allowing everyone else to see us live at that level and meet us there.
Well, I think everything's a vibration. Everything's a frequency. And maybe that's language that some people listening might not be familiar with. And I would just invite and encourage anyone, gosh, with the tools we have available today, ChatGPT, AI, Google, the internet, if you genuinely don't feel like you really understand on any level what the word frequency or vibration means, like take 20 minutes. Just ask Chat, ask Google, say, what is the basic definition? Everything is like a sound wave. Everything is it's like you can't see it. You can't see the wind. You can't see energy. You can't see frequencies. But science has helped us discover those and test them. We know they're real. Like, I know electricity works, but I can't tangibly like see it. I just know if I flip the switch on,
Right.
it works, right? So there's like a frequency that we all function on. And when we are functioning from a frequency of, I play these roles, I've abandoned myself, this isn't really what I want to do, but I don't want to.
It lowers the frequency. It lowers the vibration.
Absolutely it does, but it also causes everybody else to have to match that frequency.
And you're saying, live your authentic self, raise to a higher vibration, and then everyone matches that. You attract that vibration.
Well, that's the hard part. Not everyone does. So this is where the rubber meets the road. Like, in order to keep certain people in our lives, we have to abandon ourselves. And in order to stop abandoning ourselves...
Oh, hold on. That's good. I get what you're saying. The whole contextual conversation now comes to head. To be the truest version of ourselves, we have to be comfortable with abandoning other people, and the results of abandoning other people, we have to be able to be okay with that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So in other words, all the people that are currently in my life, if I were to discover that I'm not really being myself and that I've abandoned myself, and I start identifying these roles that I play in certain relationships, certain dynamics, in certain categories or spaces of my life, and I'm like, that's not working for me anymore. That's creating dis-ease. That's creating stress. I'm unfulfilled. I'm not content. I don't like that version of myself. And so I decide, well, I'm no longer going to be willing to abandon myself. So think of it as if you were on the country music frequency and you decided to move to hard rock frequency, well, all the people in your life that have gotten accustomed to you being country music, when that hard rock comes on the next time you show up as the new version of you, that's going to feel disruptive to them.
I don't want any of that.
Hey, where'd my country music go? Who changed the station?
Who listens to this?
Right. Who are you?
Yeah.
You've
changed.
You've changed. What's wrong with you? Right? And so what most of us seem to do, and what I've done many times throughout my life, and the pattern that I see, is that ultimately, in order to fit in, ultimately, in order to feel loved and accepted, I end up compromising myself, thinking that I need the approval of these people around me. And it gets harder the closer they are. So kids, immediate family, spouses, romantic relationships, parents, it is much more difficult to set down the roles and stop playing the game that on some level is killing many of us men deep inside. And finally say, listen, I love all of you all, but I'm done. I'm laying down that version of myself, and I'm stepping into a different vibration and a new frequency, and I'm not going to abandon myself anymore. And if they are unable in that space to adapt and to be flexible and hopefully see it as permission for them to do the same thing. Because most likely...
this is a good thing.
This is a great thing, but not everybody sees it that way, at least initially. So the question always comes back to, am I going to keep abandoning myself in order to keep everything the way it is? Or am I going to be okay with everything not being the way it is so I can stop abandoning myself?
Yeah.
And it always goes back to the illusion of separation. And this will be something that I will talk about over and over and over again in probably every episode on some level. And I think it's at the core of my work is, and I don't think it matters. You can be raised religiously, you could be raised non-religiously. It is so embedded in society and just the overall narrative of planet Earth. Most of us are living like we are a drop in the ocean or a wave in the ocean, not realizing we are the ocean itself. And, you know, it's not easy, but most people's greatest addiction is to the limited version of themselves that they think they are.
Yeah.
That's what they're actually addicted to more than
Yes.
anything. Because if I am the ocean, then I am the universe expressed in human form. I am God likeness. I am source. I am spirit. I am energy, pure energy. I am the most powerful being. And I am temporarily incarnated in a body in human form, getting the entire human experience that's baked in limitation. And the idea is that at some point I wake up and remember the limitless soul that I am. Because to get caught up in the limited version of me is to always be thinking that I'm separate, that I'm not included, that I need to be loved and accepted, that I have to perform to be approved. So then look at how that shows up in our business life. Look at how that shows up in our relationship. Look at how that shows up in how we handle Thanksgiving. But if I have the realization and the revelation, and I come from the place that I am the universe, and that the whole purpose of being here is that I remind my human self of the limitless, timeless, boundless soul that I've always been. That's true liberation. And that's the work I do, is I simply shine light in all the places that people have become a prisoner to their misidentification of thinking they're a limited, separate version from all that is.
That's the quiet crisis.
That's the quiet crisis, is that we're all on some level living a lie. We're living in the illusion that we think, let's just say that life is one big movie, right? We keep thinking that we're a victim to the movie. We were just casted as a character that we didn't even sign up for. And I would simply invite you to actually see it as you've been the director the whole time and just didn't realize it. So if you don't like your life, if you don't like the movie,
change your role.
Cut. Change your role. And stop giving up yourself to get something that you were never supposed to need to try to get in the first place. Like, if I have a clear understanding that I am included, that I am not separate, that I am the whole, that I am love and acceptance. I don't need to get it. I am that. That I'm definitely not going to keep signing up for a bunch of shit I don't love. And yet we do it day in and day out, holiday after holiday,
Thanksgiving after
career
Thanksgiving.
after career, relationship after relationship, moment after moment. Because at the deepest core level, unconsciously, we keep thinking if I do that, then I'll finally be loved and accepted. If I do this, if I show up this way, if I play this role, I'll finally be safe. And the real liberation is to understand I am safety itself. I am peace itself.
All I was doing was telling you I changed my Thanksgiving tradition.
It's always an invitation, man.
That's fascinating, though. how you position the mind, body, and spirit basically to work in unison.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, is to get them to work in alignment in the truest version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, which means that you're taking people on a ride they know exists, but they never buy a ticket for. But they're the pilot. You just have the jet engines to help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah. So in some way, you directed the movie of your life. Your daughter's one of the characters. You must have signed up for a soul contract that at this point, you were going to set it up that she was going to be stuck in another state from where you live, and you were going to be able to finally free yourself from something that you had just not been able to bravely and courageously free yourself of yourself. So now you had a good enough story, and now it opened up your entire sphere to what you have really wanted.
We got a new movie.
Yeah, what you've been after. And that's why so often, whether it's something as simple as, you and I were scheduled to be in the podcast studio that day, and you said, hey, a couple days before Thanksgiving, hey, here's this scenario, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what we do. Everything's about story. I bet even for you, it felt easier to tell me as your client, as your business partner, that, hey, I'm not going to be able to do what we originally thought. And then you had this great story that you thought would be very acceptable to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, you could have just simply said, hey, Friday's not going to work. We're going to need to move it to another day.
Yeah, but I had to create a narrative.
We do it all the time. And that's part of why we're all exhausted.
God, it's truth.
Because I can't just
tell you.
Yeah, I've always got to have this fucking story. I
double booked myself. Friday's not going to work. Can we do Tuesday instead?
And I mean, I'm starting to notice it. I catch it in my text messaging. I catch it in almost everything. I'm like, I feel obligated, like I always owe this story, this explanation. It's a role I'm playing.
It's the quiet crisis that men and women don't talk about.
Absolutely.
I think you nailed it on the head. We all do the things that we're programmed to do, and we wonder why we're exhausted.
Yeah.
Because it's not our natural, authentic, just self.
Yeah. We're having to conjure up and think about what version of me do I need to be so that I won't get yelled at, so that no one will feel disappointed, so that no one will give me a hard time.
Yes.
Right? And we learn this as a kid.
Or you don't lose business.
Or it doesn't cost me money, or it doesn't cost me status.
Yes.
But it's all rooted in I'm lacking something, so I have to be this person, or I have to perform this role, because if I don't, then I won't get XYZ, which I perceive that I'm lacking. But if you knew you were lacking nothing, it'd be a lot easier to stop playing the bullshit roles that you don't like playing. Welcome to the Ryan Luelf Podcast Show.
And I was just going to say that. I think I don't know that there's anyone else that has the type of content that you have. I don't think anyone else can coach the way that you coach. And I don't think anyone else can package the content and the material in such a simplified way that should make any person watching this, specifically men, go, who's Ryan Luelf? And how do I get a hold of him? Because you're transforming not just people's mind, but their lives and the lives they associate with.
Absolutely.
And at the highest levels.
Yeah.
At the highest vibration. Yeah. At the highest frequency.
Yeah.
And I think we'll dive into more of that on the next episode of the Ryan Luelf Show.